Hey guys, welcome back. I've been trying to enjoy Cold War multiplayer recently. Emphasis on the trying. I actually don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people like to say, but there's one thing that's preventing pretty much everybody from enjoying it. Skill-based matchmaking. And with the way the industry is implementing this feature nowadays, I'm really concerned about how 343 are going to handle it in Halo Infinite's multiplayer, because if it's implemented as poorly as it is in Cold War, it is literally going to kill the game for so many of us, and today I want to talk about why. So first, let me explain exactly what skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, actually is. In layman's terms, it's a matchmaking algorithm that prioritizes skill over any other factor, so the people on your team and the enemy team are near identical to you in terms of skill. Now, the way this skill is measured is of course dependent on the game that we're talking about, but typically all variables feed into a hidden kind of rating system that is attached to your account called MMR, which is basically a numerical representation of your skill. It boils your skill down into a number. Current theories as to why these systems are so prevalent nowadays suggest that it might be something to do with esports. So, with the popularization and rise of esports in recent years, and the focus and resources that developers and publishers pour into esports, they implement SBMM based on the assumption that most players want to improve at the game and become as good as the players that they watch win their $1 million tournaments. However, according to one of the lead developers on Apex Legends, who actually just so happens to be an ex-Halo 2 and Halo 3 pro, an ex-343 developer, and also a good friend of mine, Eric Goes to the Army, SBMM increases retention for 80 to 90% of players in Apex Legends, which is basically the silent majority of players. However, this is for Apex Legends, a battle royale game which, as Halo fans you all know very well, functions very differently to a 4v4 shooter. See, battle royale has a lot of kind of downtime mixed into its pacing, where the player is moving to the next circle or looting an empty building where they can just kind of chill in between periods of intense combat. These periods of quiet and relaxation break up the intense action, so even with skill-based matchmaking, the player can still have a relatively chill experience. 4v4 games like Halo or 6v6 games like Call of Duty do not have that luxury, however. They're non-stop action on smaller maps that are designed to actively funnel you towards the enemy and usher you into engagements. So I don't necessarily think that skill-based matchmaking data from a battle royale game translates very well over to Halo or Call of Duty. People have very different expectations from both styles of game, and so the way that they react to the systems in place, like SBMM, will be inherently different. Now, I'm going to touch more on the damage that skill-based matchmaking causes, not only to our subjective experiences with the game, but to the actual core of the game later on in the video. But the two main reasons that skill-based matchmaking in its current state is so awful are, number one, games are far too sweaty because everybody is at the same skill level. You can't just chill out, turn your brain off and do semi-decent anymore. You have to bring your A game every game if you want to do even remotely decent and not get trashed. And number two, according to extensive research done by COD YouTubers Drifter, Exclusive Ace, JGod and Sour, SBMM increases your average ping because the algorithm prioritizes putting you in a game with people of a similar skill level who may just happen to be in other countries, as opposed to connecting you to your closest server to ensure your connection is good. Specifically, the higher your skill, the higher your average ping will be, and by a considerable amount. Picture a bell curve where the more extreme your skill is on either the right or the left, the worse your connection is. However, right, before we go any further, I just want to set the record straight. This is not going to be an anti-skill-based matchmaking video. Despite my clear grievances with the system, I do not think for a second that it should be entirely removed. Somebody who's been playing Halo for like 20 years and has won millions of dollars playing it should not be matching somebody who stepped through a time machine from 1855 and just found out what video games are. In fact, skill-based matchmaking has been a thing in Halo since Halo 2, and rightly so. And I can guarantee that your favourite multiplayer game, whether it's a Halo game or a Call of Duty or a Battlefield or Counter-Strike or Gears of War or FIFA or literally anything, has always had some semblance of skill-based matchmaking in all of its playlists. The main issue is not the existence of skill-based matchmaking, rather it's how tightly controlled it is, specifically outside of ranked modes. And this is where Halo has, for the most part, succeeded in implementing skill-based matchmaking, and why I don't think all hope is quite lost just yet in regards to Halo Infinite. The biggest reason people are so up in arms about how tightly controlled SBMM is nowadays is because it's tightly controlled in all playlists, ranked and social, and in some cases, like Call of Duty, there isn't even a ranked mode. All modes are social, yet are treated like ranked and expect you to play as if they are ranked, despite the fact that there is no visible ranking system. Halo, on the other hand, has always had that distinctive ranked social split. There's a group of ranked playlists where you have a physical rank that you can track and that increases in number the more you win and the more that you improve at the game. These are the playlists meant for people who want to actively improve at the game and, as such, feature a very strict skill-based matchmaking system. However, not everyone is so focused on being the best Halo player possible, and for them, there's the social playlists that have no rank tied to them. They're built for those who just want to chill out and play some Halo with their buddies after a long day at work or school and not have to worry about bringing their A-game every game. And as such, these playlists feature a looser yet still present SBMM system. Don't get it twisted, all social modes in Halo's history from Halo 2 to Halo 5 had skill-based matchmaking, but because they were social, the skill-based matchmaking was far more loosely controlled than ranked, where it was far stricter to ensure that games were as fair as possible and that you were matching players of your skill level. However, Halo 5 did handle it very differently to previous Halo games. Firstly, Halo 5 didn't launch with any social playlists. Not one. For almost a month and a half after launch, the only way to play regular Halo 5 multiplayer was ranked. There were no social playlists to just sit back and chill in, and it wasn't until the Cartographer's Gift update that 343 brought back social game modes. But secondly, when these social playlists did eventually arrive, they featured a far stricter skill-based matchmaking system than social playlists in previous games. Now, I remember experiencing this firsthand when they first came out, but just to be sure that I wasn't misremembering, I spoke to a number of content creators who have played Halo 5 far more than me, who are all SR152 and who know far more about Halo 5 than I do, and they all said the same thing. Halo 5 Social feels far sweatier and more ranked-like than any previous social playlist. So, despite Halo 5 eventually bringing back the staple Halo ranked social split, SBMM was still far more prevalent in social modes than ever before, and I worry that this, combined with Halo's renewed focus on esports and the overall shift in SBMM implementation in recent years across the entire industry, is going to lead to Halo Infinite suffering from many of the same problems as Black Ops Cold War, regardless of whether the game has that ranked social split. Alright, so now that I've explained skill-based matchmaking, its history with Halo, and why it's a positive and healthy thing when implemented correctly, I want to dedicate this section of the video to looking at just how damaging it is when, like Black Ops Cold War, it's implemented poorly. Firstly though, let me just briefly define what I mean when I say implemented poorly, because again, a lot of people like to just broadly say that SBMM should be outright removed from all video games, and I just think that's really stupid, because it shouldn't be at all. Skill-based matchmaking is implemented poorly when it blurs the line between social and ranked, and makes social modes feel too sweaty and too much like ranked modes, regardless of whether or not the game features official ranked modes or not. Pretty simple, I think. So, let's take a look at the damage poorly implemented SBMM causes. I'll be using Cold War as the prime example here, but all of these points could, and in some cases already do apply to Halo, so just keep that in mind. The biggest issue that it causes, at least to me, is that regardless of your skill level, the game quite literally punishes you if you do well. See, the way these systems work is they sort players into skill brackets, which the player then advances or falls through based on their performance in game. This means that, if you happen to just have a good game, like we all do sometimes you just get on and you have a good night for whatever uncontrollable reason. The game then assumes you're now better than everyone in your skill bracket and bumps you up to the next one. It doesn't matter if you did well because you improved as a player, or because you just happened to get the jump on your enemies and shoot them in the back because of a weird spawn. It doesn't account for accidental and rather human increases in performance like this that aren't a consequence of you improving as a player. All it recognizes is that you outperformed most of the other players in your game, of whom were all sort of on your skill level, and thus bumps you up into the next skill bracket which it thinks you belong. In which, if your superior performance was just by accident, you more than likely don't belong. This mistake that the system makes by not accounting for human variables leads to a miserable experience where, if you just so happen to do well like 1 or 2 games in a row, you're subsequently put into a game where everyone is far better than you and will destroy you. You shouldn't have to worry about doing well in a game. It's absurd to me. Another issue is that, at least based on my assumptions, SBMM is a system that inherently believes that every player actively wants to improve at the game and become the best player they can be, and frankly, that's just not true. On the one hand, you have players like, myself for example, who do go out of their way to practice their aim and practice their movement and learn things about the game to improve at it. But then, on the other hand, you have the backbone of literally every game's population, the casual community, who just want to come home from a long day at work and just play a few chill games in the little free time they have and aren't bothered about improving their aim or their movement or map knowledge or whatever. They just want to chill and game and have fun, and SBMM actively goes against that. In their own skill bracket, these players have to bring their A game to keep up with the other players in their match because they're all on the same skill level as them, so they can't really slack off. And then, if for whatever reason they have the audacity to do alright in a few games, they're bumped up to the next skill bracket and proceed to get annihilated. Playing with friends of varying skill levels creates issues too, at least in Cold War. The game kind of seems to base the entire party's ranking off only one player, so if you search with a friend who is considerably better than you, chances are you're going to be put in a game with people who are far better than you, or vice versa, making the game either far too difficult or far too easy, neither of which are healthy. Because of how similar in skill every person is in a match thanks to strict SBMM, the way players actually play the game is severely watered down as well. Because everyone has to bring their A game now, they have to bend the knee to the all-powerful meta. There's no room for using off-meta classes or weaker, kind of interesting weapons, or at least in the case of Halo, there's no room for picking up weaker weapons or using weaker vehicles. There's no room for fun playstyles anymore if you want to do well and win. You have to follow the meta or be prepared to get destroyed by those who do. Another glaring issue that I did already touch on today is how SBMM affects connection. When skill becomes the #1 factor in who you match with, ping is disregarded, or at least it's lower down the pecking order, as Drifter and co found in their analysis of Cold War's SBMM. This causes upwards of a 50% increase in ping, which, especially for people who live far away from the servers or don't have the best internet, is absolutely crippling. And on top of all of the other issues caused by strict SBMM, just makes the game a miserable experience. And then there's the way that strict SBMM can be bent to a publisher's needs and wants. For example, there's been this patent that was filed by Activision that's been doing the rounds for a few years now that basically would have bad players put in lobbies with good players who have brought overpowered weapons in microtransactions, who will proceed to destroy the bad players with these paid-for weapons to try and incentivize them to also buy the microtransaction. And when they do, they then become the good player and the cycle repeats. In the age of egregious, intrusive microtransactions, although we do have no evidence to suggest that this patent or any like it have made their way into any games yet, I don't doubt that at some point down the line, they will. So, now that I've brought to light many of the biggest issues with poorly implemented skill-based matchmaking, I want to round off the video with my worries about SBMM in Halo Infinite, and how I would go about implementing them if I were in charge. What it all comes down to is this. Casual players have long been the backbone of Halo's success. There are, of course, a large number of other sub-communities that contribute too, but casual, social players have always been the backbone, and I really don't want to see social Halo become a thing of the past, and these players be driven away. Halo always had that fantastic ranked social playlist split that catered perfectly to both casual and the more hardcore groups of fans, but without one group overlapping or invalidating the other, and that addressed the modern grievances with SBMM perfectly. Want to play to learn from your opponents and become a better player? Play ranked. Just want to play some chill casual Halo with friends of all skill levels after a long day at work? Play social. But given the direction that Halo 5 took skill-based matchmaking in, combined with the direction that the industry as a whole has taken skill-based matchmaking in recent years, I worry that this split, even if present, will be nothing but an illusion. I worry that skill-based matchmaking in the social playlists will be too strict and will blur the lines between social and ranked. The only way to play truly casual social Halo in Halo 5 was by going into the non-XP, non-ranked community server browser, and I really don't want that to be the case with Halo Infinite. How would I fix it? I'd go back to the way that Halo 3 did it. Exactly the way that Halo 3 did it. 2 sets of playlists, one ranked, one social. All those in the ranked list have extremely strict SBMM to ensure that all games are as fair as can be and to encourage players to improve at the game and receive visual rank increases as a reward for doing so. All the playlists in the social set will still have SBMM, but it'll be far more loosely controlled in an effort to unblur the line between ranked and social, and to ensure that social feels like the mixing pot of players of all skill ranks that it was always meant to be, but while ensuring that games are relatively fair still. And with that said, that's all I have to say about skill-based matchmaking and Halo Infinite. I've had my eye on SBMM for a while now, but playing Cold War and seeing its community up in arms about it really pushed me over the edge and compelled me to make this video, because I really don't want to see Halo Infinite go in a similar direction. Feel free to give me your thoughts and opinions on the topic down below. I know that SBMM is a pretty contentious one, so just be respectful and get some healthy debate going. I went out of my way to ensure that this video was as neutral, as fair, yet as poignant as possible on the topic, so just try and ensure that discussion in the comments is as well. And so, that's gonna do it for today. I want to give a massive thank you to Halo Jedi for becoming a new iconic one over on Patreon. Thank you very, very much, my dude. The iconic is strong with you. As well as, of course, everyone else who continues to support me over there. And thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next one. My second SCP video.